When you hear the words man of God, you probably think of faith, integrity, and spiritual guidance. But what happens when those same trusted figures cross the line from preaching righteousness to breaking the law? Today, we are counting down 10 Nigerian pastors whose shocking actions led to arrest, trial, and jail time. The list is presented in countdown style from number 10 down to number 1. At number 10 is Pastor Feyi Daniels, who was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2024. In May 2023, he was accused of sexually assaulting a 25-year-old church member at his Lekki residence. He was also accused of essaying 2 other women, all members of his church. The criminal attacks on the victims took place at his Lekki residence and on his church premises in Ikeja. According to court testimony, one victim said the cleric spoke in tongues as he forced himself on her. Daniels is a founder of Irene Christian Ministry and is married with 2 sons. He was once seen as a rising voice in Nigeria's Christian community. He built influence through his ministry, business schools, and even philanthropic projects. His church had branches across the world, and he was known for consulting with major corporations and governments. Once known for global influence, prophecies, and philanthropy, he will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. At number 9 is Akolade Arowolo, a youth pastor at the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Magada Parish in Lagos. In June 2011, tragedy struck when Arowolo attacked his wife with a knife at their Isolo home in Lagos. Titilayo Omozoji, who was a banker with Sky Bank, suffered fatal injuries during the horrific attack that shocked Nigerians nationwide. During the trial, he claimed his wife died accidentally, alleging that she inflicted knife injuries on herself during an argument. But the evidence told a different story. After years of legal proceedings, Justice Latifa Tokunbo of the Ikeja High Court found him guilty of murder. In 2014, he was sentenced to death for the killing of his wife. The case shocked the public because he was not only a young husband and father, but also a pastor in one of Nigeria's largest churches. His crime and shocking defense made headlines across the country, leaving many to question how a man entrusted with spiritual leadership would commit such an act of violence. At number 8 is Bishop Kenneth Duke, founder of a popular church in Abuja. In March 2023, the 52-year-old cleric was accused of violating the trust placed in him when a 12-year-old girl, the daughter of a church member, who was left in the family's care, was brought to Abuja with the understanding that she would live with the bishop's family so his wife could help her learn the skill. But the following day, the bishop reportedly sent his own children on an errand, leaving himself alone with the girl. According to the case presented in court, he gave her some mathematics work to solve and then defiled her. The matter was taken up by the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, and heard at the Federal Capital Territory High Court in Gudu, presided over by Justice Adebiyi Osolo. After reviewing the evidence, the court found Bishop Duke guilty and sentenced him to 20 years in prison without the option of fine. Number 7 on our list is Pastor Chidi Ebiri Okoroafo, General Overseer at the Altar of Solution and Healing Assembly in Uigbo River State. He was sentenced to death in 2023 for killing 3 people: his choir mistress, her friend, and the friend's daughter. The court found that Pastor Okoroafo murdered his choir mistress after impregnating her. According to news reports, the pastor told the choir mistress to terminate the pregnancy, but she refused. That was his motive for taking her life. To cover up his crime, he killed her friend, Chigozie Ezenwa, and Ezenwa's 9-month-old daughter, Christabel. Okoroafo was arrested in December 2018 after police discovered the victims' bodies in 2 locations in Uigbo. Justice S.O. Benson of the Rivers State High Court ruled that the pastor be executed either by hanging or lethal injection. And number 6 is Pastor Favor Maxi Okoise, the General Overseer of Refiners Global Assembly in Calabar, Cross River State, who was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2025 for forcing himself on a 16-year-old girl. The convicted pastor took advantage of the minor from November to December 2016 in the Calabar South local government area of the state. The victim came to Calabar in August 2016 for her post-university tertiary matriculation examination, UTME, and lived with her elder sister, where the church founder frequently visited her to share spiritual teachings. The victim testified in court that the convict harassed her and touched her inappropriately many times. She noted that after several failed attempts to force her into having carnal relations, he manipulated her into believing that God needed her body as much as her spirit and soul. Pastor Favor claimed that he could transfer spiritual virtues to her through intercourse, forcing her against her will to comply, and brainwashed her to accept him as her spiritual father, who could help her serve God. Favor Max Okuishi was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2025 and ordered to pay a compensation of 1 million naira to the survivor. Moving on to number 5 is Ebenezer Oduton, a former pastor of the Redeemed Christian Church of God branch, City of David Church in Naz Island, who was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison for stealing over £125,000 from his church. Oduton, a 58-year-old pastor and taxi driver, was found guilty of 87 counts of theft, fraud, and falsifying company records. As a sole signatory of the church's account between 2012 and 2020, he diverted church funds for personal use, including payments for his wife's business and private health insurance. The presiding judge described his actions as a prolonged, premeditated, and well-planned scheme, noting that Oduton abused the trust of his congregation and used church funds as his personal account. He also inflated donation figures to obtain extra refunds under Island's charitable donation scheme. None of the stolen money was recovered. Oduton's sentence was backdated to March 13, 2024, when he was first taken into custody. At number 4 is 45-year-old Pastor Oduwe Ubu, who was convicted and sentenced in June 2025 by a Lagos State Sexual Offences Court sitting in Ikeja to 53 years imprisonment for defiling his 14-year-old biological daughter. The judge noted that the pastor was not remorseful despite his plea for leniency. The court noted the evident trauma experienced by the victim, who was in government custody for 3 years before testifying. The victim recounted that the sexual assault started when she turned 14 and her father threatened her not to tell anyone. However, she confided in her school teacher, who reported to a social worker, who in turn called in the police. The pastor's wife and mother of the victim passed away when the children were little. It was reported that his other children lived with their maternal grandmother in the village. Number 3 is a pastor with Winners Chapel Church, Omu Okiti, Enoch William, who was sentenced to life imprisonment by an Ado Ekiti High Court in 2024 for defiling a minor who attends his church. He committed the criminal act when the victim, who is the daughter of a member of the church, visited the vicarage. The victim usually visited the vicarage to assist the pastor's wife with domestic chores, as well as assist his young children with school assignments. During one of her visits there, the pastor sedated a soft drink and offered her to drink. The minor slept off after taking the drink, only to wake up and find out that she had been defiled. The court found him guilty and sentenced him to life imprisonment. Number 2 is Prophet Michael Olurumbi of the Cherubim and Seraphim Church, Birmingham, who assaulted children over a 20-year period. He manipulated his victims to take part in a spiritual bath, which he told them would cleanse them of evil spirits, and sexually assaulted them in the process. His victims were children when the abuse started, one of them being just 8 years old. The prophet, who is also a qualified pharmacist, took some young victims who became pregnant multiple times to clinics for termination. He was also found guilty of sexual assault of 6 women and a man, 5 of whom attended his church. The pastor, who was 60 years old at the time of conviction in 2020, was sentenced to 34 years behind bars, while his wife Juliana, 58, was sentenced to 11 years in prison for aiding and abetting the abuse. Before we go to number 1, kindly share your thoughts on this story. Last on the list is Pentecostal preacher Emeka Eziugo. popularly known as Reverend King, who was sentenced to death for setting his church member Anne Uzo on fire for what he called acts of fornication, leading to her death 11 days later. He set her ablaze alongside 5 other members who survived with severe burns. Ezuogo, General of Overseer of the Christian Praying Assembly in Lagos, was first convicted in 2007 after the Court of Appeal upheld in the ruling of 2013. He took the case to the Supreme Court, but a 5-member panel led by Justice Sylvester Nguta unanimously affirmed the death sentence, describing the case as one that could have been lifted from a horror film. The psychology graduate, Reverend King, had openly admitted to flogging members of his church, claiming it was punishment for acts of fornication or adultery. His critics also accused him of indulging in illicit sex with women in his congregation. My heart goes out to all the victims and their families. Please share your thoughts about today's episode and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.